Let's go. Getting ready, about to go live. You know we always have a good time, so count it down, make some noise. Chat is open. If you're here, let us know. Start the cheering. Let's have fun and start connecting. You worry soon you'll be forgetting, 'cause you are here with us now. We are all friends. Sit back and relax, we can begin. Ready or not, here we go. We're all here, so let's start the show. Let's support each other. We can do everything all together. Ready or not, here we go. We're all here, so let's start the show. You
Hello and welcome everyone. And if you're watching live or in the replay, and I have Amy here who already reserved her space in the replay because she can't be here. And we have Keith here. Hello, and we have Tim. Hi, and scrolling. And of course, Laura. Exactly. Let's go. And I'm so excited. I have a guest again. It turns out asking people to come on will fill your show with guests, and that's so amazing. So, today we're going to talk with Tatiana Rodriguez. She's a dynamic educator, content creator, speaker, and adjunct professor of public speaking, leadership, and interpersonal communication. And we're going to talk with her about her content journey, content creator journey, and we're also going to talk in part 2 about storytelling, and especially storytelling for content creators. So please welcome Tatiana. So nice
Hey,
to have
what's
you
up,
here.
Marcus? Thank you so much for that great workout before we got started here today. I need to do more exercise, so that was
Yeah.
perfect. And I was like, wow, I could really feel this. This is good. My heart rate is up.
Yeah, and it just gets someone in the mood and a bit more relaxed to go live. And so
Awesome. Yes, for sure.
I always think, should I do countdown timers or not? And one should I ever say no, we cut the countdown timer? I probably need to do the dancing just off the air too.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, right? It gets
absolutely.
things flowing. I like that. Especially, I teach public speaking, so if anybody's nervous physically before they do any kind of presentation or speaking, dancing is a great way to let go of some of that nervous energy. Like having your body do something physical is great. So I love it. I love it personally. Thank you. That was a surprise. I didn't realize we were going to be doing that today. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I put that in the Google Doc, but maybe it's not explained so well. So, but yeah, it usually
Or
turns out.
perhaps I didn't read it thoroughly. Sorry.
No, you don't need to admit to anything. Just plead the fifth. No, yeah, but I always think as long as I make the guests look better than me with the dancing, then we are all good. And so I do the bad dancing, and the guest is always
There's no such
off to
thing as
good.
bad dancing.
Yeah,
As long as
exactly.
you're feeling it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah, so tell us a bit about yourself. You're teaching public speaking, and you're also creating content, and I see some synergies there.
Yes. Well, let's start with a little journey driving in the car from Massachusetts. The sun outside was absolutely gorgeous, but my mind was a stormy, hot mess. I had been consulting with several neurosurgeons. I had had a car accident on the heels of leaving a cushy, comfortable, safe job at a hospital to pursue my creative dreams. I had opened up a photography and a video company. I had launched full time into it after leaving the cushy job at the hospital in healthcare administration. And then I had a car accident, and as a result of that, a cervical spine surgery. And I just kept thinking, now what? Now what? And it took a while. It took a few years for me to figure out what was going to be my direction because of the nature of the injury. I could no longer do photography and video. And someone at my church asked me to help run a creative leadership program for high schoolers. And so I was teaching leadership, creativity, and photography and video skills to high schoolers in this program. And it was a wonderful experience. But I realized that high schoolers were just a little bit too young. Like my personality, the content that I was offering felt like it resonated more with older students. And an opportunity opened up to teach at the university through some networking. Networking is very important, but through some networking. And there I discovered that I loved photography and video. I loved it. And I was so sad and disappointed and discouraged frustrated, and maybe some of you guys listening have had this experience too in a past life of your past careers or something along those lines, where you just were like, I thought this was it. I thought this was the right way for me. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. So this is the part where I'm at. I'm at this place where I have no idea what I should be doing. But I get this opportunity to teach at the university. And guess what? I loved photography and video, like I said, but I fell in love with teaching. And I got to bring my photography and video skills with me. All that creativity, all that was not wasted, but rather it was a stepping stone to get to this next space. And in that environment of teaching, I love technology. I love visual imagery and video stories. So I would bring all that into the classroom. And when COVID came around, I was equipped to do the virtual teaching. In fact, what was going on in the world was difficult, but I was excited at the opportunity to be very creative in a way that I had not had the chance to do before, because I taught only in person. And through that came myself discovering, someone mentioned, a person in the Ecamm community mentioned Ecamm to me, and then I became part of the Ecamm family. And then it's when I started to meet everyone, and even how I got connected to you, Marcus, was through Lita, the
Absolutely.
last Lita.
Yeah.
And that's how I found out who you were. You were like a moderating ninja. Like, you were everywhere. I was like, Marcus is here and here and here
Yeah.
and here. How does he do it? Does he clone
It's
himself?
all an illusion. Yeah. Something funny I noticed right now, because before the show we talked about, we're gonna talk about your journey, and we're also gonna talk about storytelling. And I was thinking, but I didn't bring it up. Can we also tell your journey as a story and make an arc of that? And then I didn't talk with you about that, but wasn't that just storytelling what you did right now? Or
What kind of a teacher would I be if I didn't practice what I'm about to preach? So
okay,
I hope that I implemented, and I know the goal of the show is to be very casual and not scripted. So I just
sure.
mentally, and I want to show that tonight to today, whatever time of day it is when you're listening, that we definitely, hey, David W. Ryan.
Exactly.
It's I did take a moment to think about how exactly I wanted to share what brought me here, because it is the question you wanted me to talk about, a bit of the creator journey. And I did want to phrase it around story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
I did want to
it's so
incorporate that.
powerful, because I love that teaching by example, and it worked, because I really had to concentrate. Oh, I'm here to ask questions. I was instantly glued to the screen and listening, and I guess that is the power of the storytelling.
That is. And
Yeah.
and we are going to talk,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about what is that power exactly. We're going to give that power a name tonight,
Yeah.
and help equip everybody on here who wants to get better at storytelling to be able to do that starting today. This is not like you have to wait to implement this stuff.
That's so fantastic. So yeah, then you had this accident, and it really threw you off your life as you knew it, and then it brought new opportunities along. So I think the important thing is to recognize those opportunities and to take them.
Yeah, and I just want to make the point that, while I told you guys that story in a couple of minutes, that was a 3-year journey. That's so what? What am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do next? It took many years to sort that out and to figure that out. So if anybody's feeling discouraged about the stage that they're in, or they're facing barriers, obstacles, or even something as serious as mine was just facing, a spinal surgery to heal, sometimes, the timing may not be what we wanted, but it's worth investigating. It's worth investing in yourself to figure out those things, and for me also having a supportive environment and people to support me through that I could be honest and open with and talking through that. But yes, like you said, Marcus, to be open, like where's the opportunity in this tragedy? what is the lesson in this loss for me? What can I get from this situation to help me move forward? And when I was younger, would I have said, you know what, I want to grow up to be a content creator. I want to teach online. I want to teach in person. I love teaching adults. I don't think I would have said that. But yet this is the thing that I have fallen the most in love with in my entire life as a work of my heart to give to people. So here I am. Here I am, Marcus,
Here
on
you are,
Marcus's
yeah,
show.
and we are so lucky that you are here, and yeah, I think one very powerful thing about live streaming is the community around it. So you mentioned of course the Ecamm community, but then also your own community you're building when you go live, and it's, for me, it's one of the, if not the greatest motivating force to continue with creation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've seen that in my own experience as well. From Ecamm being connected to Lita, and then from Lita being connected to Live Streaming Pros and the Accelerator program, and everything connected that I've invested in so far has helped me build relationships that I would not have otherwise built. And what I love especially about the Ecamm community is this encouragement and this sincerity of people who, maybe some of these people I'll never get a chance to meet. I mean, Marcus, what country do you live in again?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. I was going to say
Yeah.
Sweden, but I was close.
Oh,
So
that's a
Switzerland,
very common mistake to make.
it's
So,
the SW. But do you know you're from Switzerland, and you know how they always talk about Switzerland being neutral?
yeah.
Being a neutral country, right? So Costa Rica, one of the taglines for Costa Rica, which is where I was born, is Costa Rica, the Central American Switzerland. That's one
Okay.
of the taglines of Costa Rica, because Costa Rica also has that same mentality of neutrality and compromise and all that. So anyway, that's something we shared in common now that you say
Yeah,
Switzerland.
we're very strong with compromise. Neutrality is a difficult topic nowadays, but we don't will not get political here.
Yes, and Marcus,
Yeah.
not to overstep here, but this comment that Anna says, I happen to be able to see it. She said beauty from ashes. I think that encapsulates exactly what we're trying to say here too.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
sometimes that is possible.
Yeah, and thank you for helping me spot the comments, because you know how it is, especially in interviews. You should listen to the guest, and then we look to the comments, and then my ADHD
Totally.
brain kicks in, and I'm all over the place.
Trust me, I understand. It's a skill in and of itself, just to learn how to divide our mind to be able to pay attention to everything going on when we're doing a stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the teaching is something you're doing for a while now, and I guess you're real confident, and everything is settled in. Is that the same with streaming?
I do feel confident and engaged when I teach in person, and even when I teach online. So when I go to the university and I'm teaching my students, and this week I taught both in person and virtually. So I do a combination. Today I had my college students in my leadership course doing press conferences. My public speaking students, we were doing special occasion speaking. So I feel confident. But I no longer get nervous about that like I did in the beginning. But there was always so much excitement around it that it completely defeated any nerves. With streaming, I consider myself an advanced beginner, but I'm still in the beginning stages. And maybe a lot of you guys are too. I don't know. Maybe you're way past that, but for me, in these beginning stages, there's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of uncertainty in terms of, what do I need to do to build an audience? How do I engage people? How do we do this? How do we do that? So I'm very confident in the teaching aspect, but I am learning and growing through the accelerator program, through the Ecamm community, through my own searching and networking. How do I continuously improve as a streamer? So I'm on the journey. This is part of the
Absolutely.
journey for me, is all of the learning. So I think even just coming on tonight is part of that creative journey and learning. Here's one thing that's super important, is like to always put yourself on the other side of the camera. I used to do this too when I did photography and video. Like, I got to remember what it's like to be the one being photographed, to be the one being videoed. Same thing for live streaming. It is very different to be the host of the show than it is to be the guest. And the more we can understand and appreciate and take that perspective of the other person, the better streamers we're going to be,
Yeah,
because we can really
absolutely.
appreciate what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah, and then one step further to think what is it to be on the other side in front of the devices and watching the stream, because yeah, as you said, we're advanced beginners. I really like that classification, and so a very effective and good way for me to figure out what will work and what will not work, because a lot of it is guesswork, but I just try to think, would I enjoy it if I were a viewer who doesn't really know me or doesn't really care about me? And I think that goes a long way to recognize what is a good delivery.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
important questions. And there's a constant reflection and self-assessment. There's this saying that experience will make me wiser. And I think most people would agree. I don't know, you guys watching live, like, would you agree that experience makes you wiser? I feel like I heard a pastor say that one time. Do you agree that experience makes you wiser? And most people say, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But the truth is, experience does not make us wiser.
Okay.
Evaluated experience makes us
There
wiser.
you go. Yeah. Okay.
When we reflect, when we assess, when we make changes, when we go back and debrief, that's what's going to make us wiser and better at streaming, or pretty much at anything.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think especially in content creation and streaming, I see many people, and I was once the same, who constantly consume content about doing it and thinking about doing it and accumulating all this knowledge, and then that goes all to waste because we never actually do it. I think that's a big trap there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so nice. You got people saying hi in the chat. Hello,
Yeah,
everybody.
absolutely. Hi. Oh, I know I need to say that right. Don't help me. Eileen. I think, yeah, Eileen. Hi, Eileen.
Nice.
And she will correct me, but I said it wrong last time. I think now it's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, where were we?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Where were we? Oh yeah, reflection. We were talking about the importance
yeah,
of how
absolutely.
evaluated experience is what's going to
Yeah.
make us wiser. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps somebody listening today to go back and reflect. And sometimes that might mean going back and looking at our live streams, or having the truth teller friend, right? Like, there are people who love us, but they're not going to tell us the things that we're doing wrong, and that might not be their role to do that.
Mhm.
But we've got to find people who are willing to tell us the hard stuff, who are going to be honest to say, I know you have really good intentions, but you were really going on. And I think if you can work on being more concise and getting to your point faster, that will make your streaming content better. Well, whatever the thing is that we might need to be working on.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, watching it back, I think that's very, very important. And I started to put all these things I do here in a podcast. But yeah, it's only one episode until now, and then I got sidetracked. But what I realized, watching it back already gave me a lot of feedback. But then if I cut it down to more compact format, then I really learn a lot more about my content than just watching it back, because I really have to listen and to think, how does it fit all together, and yeah, so
Sure. Yeah, and then that's a great starting point, is to go back and listen to that content. But then also, we have to, when we move forward, learn how to prepare in advance so that we don't keep making those same
yeah,
issues or making those same mistakes, so that we're not like stuck in a cycle, of course, but also because we want to just constantly be making progress and getting better. So it's like, it's good to look back, but you don't want to look back too much either. You don't want to get stuck in all that. And besides, there's not enough time. We got to think about next week's live and the next content and the
Absolutely, yeah.
next thing too. But just enough reflection where you're taking a lesson and a strategy and making something better the next time. So
yeah, absolutely. Never get caught up in the past. Just take the lesson and go and move on. Okay,
Exactly.
Lala has a question. What basic steps can one take to become more confident in our storytelling as content creators? Okay, storytelling we will, uh, yeah.
Definitely. And just remind me that do you want me to pause that until later? We'll put a pin on that and then talk about it during storytelling, or do you want me to just move into storytelling?
Yeah, well, why yeah, we just move into it. That's an organic point to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a trivia question for everybody first. So tell me, what do you guys think here? If you can put it in the chat, what percentage of your content do people tend to remember on average? And this is according to Carmen Simon, who is a cognitive scientist. I have a professional crush on her. She's amazing. Everything that she says, I want to memorize. So in her work, I came across some content of hers. What percentage of your content do people tend to remember on average? So tell me what you think. And here are the options. Is it 60%? Oops. Is it 50%? Is it 35%? Or is it 10%? Tell me 60, 50, 35, or 10%. What do you guys think? Shelly, your guess is 20%. Okay, you think people remember about 20%. And I know I gave you those options a little late there, but see, David says 10. Ellie says 10%. Yep, 10. And that's because I did flash it on screen by accident. I clicked one too many times. But yes, it is in fact only 10%. So when you think about this, people only remember on the average, and it's too hard to give this a true number because sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But if we were to, and Ellie, you were going to say 2%. Okay. So hey, maybe some days that may actually be true where it's that close. When you think about this, that means that 90% of the things that you're saying on your streams, people are not remembering, which is kind of crazy to think about. But let's put a positive spin on this. Are you creating a message where people can easily remember the 10%? And are you helping them remember what 10% is important? So keeping that in mind, the good news is that stories help people remember more. So that's an excellent strategy for us to have as content creators. And here's an interesting thing. When we hear data, when we hear any information, right, content is coming into our brain, two areas in the brain light up when we hear information: the area that processes language and the area that processes comprehension, the understanding. But when we hear that same information rolled up into a really good, memorable, relatable story, 7 different areas of the brain light up. And these are the ones that relate to our senses. In addition to the processing, we have movement, imagery, touch, smell, and sounds. And so when those areas of our brains are also lighting up, well, things become a lot more memorable. And so we're able to have more engagement, right? And then when people are more engaged, they remember more. And then when people are more emotionally connected, they're making better decisions. So maybe our content is to be persuasive and not just informative. People make decisions based on emotions, not on logic. We know this because if we did make decisions only based on logic, guess what? None of us would ever lose sleep. We would always eat right. We would always exercise enough. We would never submit anything late. We would never be late because we would logically understand these decisions are important, right? We would never wait to the last minute to write the content of our stream, right? Everything would be done in advance. So emotions play a huge role in this, and stories are a part of that journey as well. And then stories are often much more inspirational. And when people feel inspired, they are much more likely to take action. So those are the, I guess, introductory things I want to mention about stories, Marcus. So I'm ready to keep going too, but I just want to come back and check in about this particular piece that I've shared about making sure we're sharing stories, number one, so that people can remember them and be more engaged and vested in our content.
Yeah, I just had to unmute myself because once you presented, for the first time ever in my stream, I started to lean back and listen.
Nice. That means you're
let,
nice and relaxed. That's good,
yeah,
Marcus.
but let me very quick say hi to Shelly Saves today, and technically the first time here, because the first time in the chat last time she was a guest. So new
Yes, I saw
people
that
get
Shelly was a guest. I recognize her picture.
new people get confetti if I recognize that they're here for the first time.
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome. Very good. That's a good engagement strategy, Marcus.
yeah, yeah, and it's easy to do once you set it up. Absolutely, and yeah, stories so powerful, and as I mentioned, it was what you did in the beginning when I asked you about your content creator story, and you told me a story, and yes, I will for always remember that story, and I think that's
Yeah, and thank you, Marcus. Well, I appreciate that from a human to human perspective too. That spoke to you, and I think how we say it matters too. I think if I were to just have said, I had a car accident and I was going through some changes and hard times and I was figuring out what I needed to do, and one thing led to another, that's very different than taking a moment to share with you the feelings, the struggles, the environment that I was in. So, and I want to share about that as well. So, Marcus, if you had to define what is a story, what would you say? Let me put you on the spot here. And if you're listening, you want to pop it in the chat too. What is a story? If we had to make a definition, what is it?
yeah. So now I need to pay attention to not just put the technical definition, because that popped in my head. A story is
technical definition is fine. Like whatever
yeah,
you think.
no,
What is a story?
yeah, a story is something I can tell. I can relate to you what happened to me or to someone else, and relate information to you, and it's me communicating something that I think I want to share with you, and maybe something that you then can share on to others.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And so on a very basic level, it's an account of events or experiences from the past, in the moment, or in the future. Right? So it's just that we share for a specific reason. But it's basically, at the very, very minimum, it's an account of events experienced. But there are stories that are great and stories that are not, right? Ways to tell that. So now that we understand what a story is, let's talk a bit about story benefits, right? Because, and you guys know this, right? There's lots of good things when it comes to story benefits. The first thing, and maybe you guys can even acknowledge some of these on your own and you can totally hear what they are, but stories bring us so many good things. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Ooh, and I see that we have some folks chiming in the chat with concepts that we're going to talk about, which is great. So the first thing I want to share is that stories are how we think and learn. Remember to your own childhood. What were some of your favorite stories that helped shape how you grew up? For me, it was Anne of Green Gables, the story about this girl named Anne Shirley. Shirley's my middle name. That totally resonated with me. This little Canadian girl who was grows up to be this fiery teacher and is always getting in trouble. So that story helped shape a lot of lessons for me, and maybe for you guys too, right? Maybe not for you guys. Maybe for you guys as well. Like, you have your favorite stories that help and shape you. So one of those benefits is stories are just how the brain operates. So let me just show you this. Like, if you guys want to close your eyes or lower your gaze for a second and imagine that you're picking up your favorite drink. You can smell it, you can feel it. You take a giant sip and you look up and you're holding a red mug. You look around your studio. You have a brand new microphone that you love. You have the new Elgato Air lights that are just so pleasant, beautiful to look at. You're surrounded by 3 monitors, an Elgato Stream Deck. You're just completely tricked out, right? You could be on a show about all this amazing gear that you have. You take that sip and you just can't believe how delicious it all tastes. Now, For any of you in that little visualization, when I talked about your favorite drink and that red mug, did any of you go in your mind REDMUG when I talked about red mug? Or when I talked about your lights, did anybody go LIGHTS in their mind? I'm betting none of you did, right? We do not think in words, we think in images. And that's a reason why storytelling is so important, to tell with those images, because it's how the human mind operates with those stories. So, absolutely. So, Ellie's on board, she did not think of the letters. So, of course, we plan words. Words are important, but we need to remember that we think in images. So, the truth is that we have a story seeking brain. From the beginning of time, human beings have learned through stories. They enjoy stories, right? Your favorite shows on TV that you love to binge watch, or your favorite movies, your favorite streams. We love these because of the element of story that's in all of these. They also help our message stick. Right? We remember things when they're tied to a story. They have a much bigger reach, so they'll travel a lot further, right? You remember so-and-so told you this story, you told another person a story. We love to reshare great stories. And I mentioned this before, but they truly do inspire action and change. And a lot of us get into streaming because we want to help people, whether it's someone like me who wants to build better communication skills in people, or someone like Lala who's teaching crafting, or another person who might be teaching health and fitness. I think I saw Cheryl on here, and I know she talks a lot about wellness and mindset. Tim Heel is on here too, and I know he talks a lot about mental health stuff, particularly for vets. And so whatever it is, we want people to take action and help them inspire change. And also can help us as people address these challenges. So these are just some of the benefits. I'm sure you guys can come up with tons and tons more, because like fun, right? I just like how fun they are as well. So what do you think, Marcus?
Oh, yep. Here you're back. Yeah, absolutely. And we get a free lecture here. it's so great. So yeah,
Hopefully
but
not a boring lecture.
no. Oh yeah. Don't let me go on about boring PowerPoints. It's the worst. No, but you're absolutely doing great with that presentation. Yeah, for me, I take out it's just a deeply human thing to tell stories and to want to listen to stories.
Absolutely. Right. It's part of our nature. We like it. We truly enjoy it. And have you ever, Marcus, or anyone listening to us, have you ever been so into a movie or a show that you didn't realize what time it was? Or you could literally feel the experience that was happening on screen, right? Have you ever had that happen to you? Where you could
Course,
feel what's going on? Like maybe you're
yeah.
watching a movie that's action packed and you're like, your heart's racing.
So Keys had that, yeah, and I think that's also the reason why we binge watch some series, because we
Right?
just
We're
want
so
to.
into the story. Oh, and another point now that you say, one of the reasons we binge watch is if we were to look back at shows from back in the day, like I'm 46. So when I was younger, our shows, the shows that I watched, they had a resolution at the end of the episode. That's not the way that it is today. Shows now are left off on a cliffhanger so that we're wondering what will happen next. So that inciting that curiosity in us is a strategy too, but it's also the reason why we binge watch, is because stories tend to they don't end with a resolution like they used to. So this is something for us to be aware of. But a lot of times we might watch a movie, and even though we know the people on screen are actors and it's not really happening to them, we can feel like if we're watching a movie and something scary happens, somebody falls into an icy pit of water, we might have a physical reaction to what happened.
Yeah.
And we might actually feel like in our mind, or we're watching a scene and this couple, and they're just so in love and they're just so sweet, and we're like melting watching this. Or we're watching and the people are experiencing this great dance, and we feel like we want to dance too. That's the power of storytelling. And obviously that's crafted with actors and music and cameras, but very similarly, those effects we experience from reading a book, right? There's no actors or audio or any other of those elements happening when we read a book, or when you're hearing your parents or your grandparents or an older person in another generation telling you about your family. That stuff isn't there yet. We have this deep connection. And here's a term I want you guys to memorize: mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the reason that we experience these things as we're watching anything or reading a story. Anytime we're hearing a story, experiencing a story. And what happened was that in the late 80s or early 90s, there were two neuroscientists at the University of Parma in Italy. So for any Italians out there, right, this is happening in the University of Italy, in Parma, the university in Italy. They were studying monkeys, and they had recorded their brain waves when the monkeys were eating peanuts. I believe it was peanuts. And then they had left these wires on and got data at a different time when the monkeys were watching human beings eating peanuts. And they found that the brain activity of the monkey was the same when the monkeys were eating peanuts as when they were watching humans eating peanuts. And that led to the discovery of mirror neurons, which is the reason why we can empathize. We can feel what's happening in a movie, in a show, in a book, in a story, because of this connection. And so it was just so interesting to find this data, because and there was another study done where people were watching, and I can't remember the source on this one, so you have to forgive me, but I know people were watching James Bond movies and they were being studied. And at the parts where James Bond was experiencing these crazy things, the people watching were having these physical responses too. So it's been studied in multiple ways. And that's just the truth of mirror neurons. Like, we empathize, and obviously different levels, right? It would be hard for me to empathize with someone who has had a totally different experience in life than me if I've not been through that. But our hearts, our sense of connection, we don't have to be exactly the same way or have the same experience as another person to empathize and to connect. And that's all because we're programmed as humans with these mirror neurons to do it. And I understand personalities are different and people connect in different ways, but I think it's just a fascinating thing for us as content creators to keep in mind about the power of storytelling. So remember, mirror neurons is the reason why people do that, and we need to learn how to use those skillfully and ethically, right? We want to use this in a way that feels honest and it feels good and it feels right, not to manipulate, which I think the majority of people out there are amazing, wonderful, great people, but there is some manipulation that happens in sales and all of that too. So
Yeah.
I think most people that come around this community, like, there's a strong sense of legitimacy and honesty. So I don't think that would be much of an issue, but we just have to be aware that it can be.
Yeah, and I took away that now I can be like James Bond. I just need to watch the movie.
Absolutely. Yes, you will
Okay.
feel what he feels,
Yeah,
right?
great.
Especially in certain parts.
And
One-
Lala
100%.
Lala has an interesting observation. She says, no wonder when I do my live streams and I engage the viewers with stories, they interact more and stay longer in the chat than just me showing them how to finish the project.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Lala. That makes perfect sense to me. Right. And that's just proving the point that we're talking about. Human beings, we love the story. It's the same for me. I watch Anna and Fulgens on Ecamm, on the Ecamm network. I watch them Monday nights when they do ENN. I watch them Fridays when they do Building Blocks. And I've gotten to learn about them through their interviews, through their live streams. And I think I'm interested to know about them. Right? We connect with people this way, and people are probably doing that exact same thing with you all the time, Lala, on your show.
And it's the reason why I want to watch Lala crafting and not just a random person or a robot crafting. I mean, live streaming is not necessarily the most efficient way to learn about crafting, but we also get this connection and the interaction, and that makes it then so powerful.
Yes. And on a scientific level and a physiological level, when that happens, we get rewards as human beings. We're experiencing dopamine deposits when we have that connection and oxytocin. So we're actually getting these really feel good chemicals when people are sharing a story that engages us, that connects us, that speaks to our heart, that makes us feel something powerful in those moments. So that's another thing that's happening in storytelling too, right? And there's all the stuff happening in our bodies as well, which is awesome. And Marcus, on that note that you were talking about with personal stories, you said you'd rather watch Lala than a random person, right? I could tell you a story about some amazing random dancer that might interest you, especially if you love dancing. But wouldn't it be more engaging if I were to actually tell you a story about a not just a random dancer, right? But of actually someone that you know. Because if we could share, if we share random, that's okay. You know, it works, especially if we're starting out in the beginning. Maybe we just want to share somebody else's story, or we're using examples and scenarios. But if we really want to connect with people, then we have to tell them personal stories, right? Because if I tell you about a random dancer, that's one thing. But if I tell you about me as a dancer and you and I have started to build a relationship, that tends to speak more to people than just randomness. So I think that personal connection does make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And yeah, we in the start already saw both of us as dancers. So, so
That is
sometimes it's
very true.
also sometimes it also can be more powerful to just show the thing if you are able to do that than to talk about it. It doesn't work with
Absolutely.
all topics,
Yes.
but if it does, yeah. And David loves the graphic. Yeah, the graphic was was awesome. Speaking of how
Oh,
to do presentations right, yeah, absolutely.
thank you. And this is behind the scenes, but I have to confess, I need to get a new computer. My computer is 2012 iMac. It's beautiful, it's big, it's great, but I can't ask it to do all the things that I need it to do
Okay.
anymore. It's exhausted. It's my computer's an old lady, and I just can't ask it to go out, doing dance parties with me anymore.
Okay.
I just need a new one. So I was trying. It was delayed for about 13 seconds from the random image to the one of me dancing. So I was like, trying
Oh,
to
I
fill
have
in
to
such.
fill the gap.
Everybody here, everybody here is a content creator too, so I know that happens. But this will not happen when I get my new machine. It will
Yeah,
be much, much, much faster.
and I think it's so awesome when you have a good excuse to get new tech, because new tech is fun, and usually we don't allow ourselves to get all the things, but you're totally good to get the new things.
But I do want to say thank you, David W. Ryan. I'm glad that you appreciate the graphics. I do spend a lot of time thinking about which ones to use, but I want to touch back on Lala's comment earlier about how do you build confidence. And in order to tell you my answer, I have to first tell you that confidence is not a feeling. Even though we always say like I feel more confident, it's not one of the human emotions. Confidence. What confidence is the result of taking action, even when we're nervous, even when we're afraid, even when we're unsure. So the more we practice telling a story, especially if we want to start out in low stakes environments, and maybe you are in a learning environment like Lita, practice some storytelling, guys. Practice taking some content in your own life that you might want to build into a stream and practice it through those groups, or find your own another network of people, or in your family or your friends or at work. Trying this out in little circles is going to build confidence over time. And then put yourself out there. Just give it a shot. What's the worst thing that happens, right? What's the worst thing that happens if you don't tell a story well? Well, people might just be a little bit disinterested or half listening, but it's not the end of the world either. So you give it a shot, tell your stories, practice, and then you start to build a bank of positive experiences. Hey, when I told that story to these people, this went really well. You know what? I'm going to try a different version of this story with this other group. And that's what's going to build confidence. Again, confidence is the result of taking action even when you're afraid, nervous, unsure, scared out of your mind. Whatever the thing is, when you take action, that's what's going to build more and more confidence. And that's the same in speaking, presenting, not just the storytelling. That's actually true in everything, I think.
Yeah, and go practice whenever you have the chance. But now, let's say I'm now totally convinced, and yeah, I need to do that, and then the show is over, and I'll try to do that, and then I think, but how? How do I
But
start?
how? I have brought some hows. How do we
Yeah,
do that to help us get started? And of course, storytelling is intense. So I can't tell you everything that I want to share with you tonight, but I do want to share at least some appetizers for you to help you get started. So let's talk about stories. Let me get to the content here on stories. So like I told you guys, my computer is an old lady who is just needs a little bit more time. So give me a second. I'm going to get to the right start. Here we go. So to talk about story structure, the first thing that you have to think about is the first thing you're going to say, which is sometimes called a hook or an attention getter. But anytime you stream, talk, always, what is the first thing? What am I going to open with when I tell the story? So that's an important thing to think about. The very first line that you're going to say. And then I want you to think about how a story, just like a stream, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. What's the beginning of the story? What's going on in the middle? And what is the end? What are you going to finish off with at the end? Or is it a to be continued kind of a thing? But you just want to think about, how am I going to start? What's happening in the middle? And how do I end? And another ingredient is vivid language. And vivid language is language that involves our senses. So it helps us see, hear, feel, touch, taste. Like some of you guys, your streams might be about food. So you're going to use language that's going to help us understand the nature, the taste of that food. Or something that's more tactile, like perhaps in Lala's crafting, you're going to talk about the way something feels. I remember going to Hershey Park, the chocolate factory in Pennsylvania, and they had a chocolatier workshop that I took. And we had to describe, before we could even eat the chocolate, we had to talk about, what does it smell like? What does it feel like? And then go into what's happening once you taste that. What ingredients do we think are in there? So vivid language is important to help people. Otherwise, it can just become kind of a boring story, more like a report. Because again, a story is an account of an experienced event, past, present, or future. But not all stories are made equal, right? And when we incorporate vivid language, language that speaks to the senses, that helps us feel, think, see things from your perspective, it's important. It's important to be able to do that. And then stories have to have some characters, some protagonists. So if we think about the story element that I shared in the beginning, the protagonist, who's the protagonist? It was me, right? I was sharing a personal story about myself. So the heroes in the story, in this case, I was talking about myself. And then, before we go on to protagonist, so we also have to have the antagonist. So who's the bad guy in our story? And it's not always a human. In my case, it's the obstacle was, right? So thinking about who's the antagonist to, like who's on the opposite side to, and then we have to give some sense of place and time. Not always required, but helpful depending on the type of story you want to share. And then the plot, which is where the conflict come in. Like, what is the struggle? What is a hero, the protagonist of our story, wanting but not able to get? The conflict doesn't always have to be a fight, but sometimes it's the tension. It's the thing that's preventing them from moving forward, being successful, getting happy. Because if I were to tell you a story, hey guys, I'm a successful content creator, live streamer, and from the moment I started, I just got connected to all the right people and the right programs and the right channels, and I had all the money I needed to make it happen, and everything is perfect and beautiful and fantastic. That's not a story anyone is really interested in hearing. Because first of all, totally not real, but also not relatable. So the conflict, the obstacles, the struggles, and sometimes the story has many ups and downs, obstacles and struggles that we want to share. So keeping in mind, what is the plot, the conflict? What's preventing our characters from getting the thing that they want? And very often it's ourselves. So when you think about the plot, just remember, like, what's the complicated part? You know that expression, it's complicated? What is the thing that makes it complicated? And then lastly, what is the purpose of our story? So you might argue that you would want to start with the purpose. I think that's probably a great practice. Like Simon Sinek says, start with your why. Why do I want to tell this story? Does this make sense for my audience? Am I understanding their pain points? Is this speaking to their pain points? When I was sharing my story, I was thinking, I want to share this tension that I was in, because I thought my life was going this way, and now it's going this way. And I think that a lot of people who are making content online might be able to relate to that or connect with that. So again, get very clear, like, why am I sharing this story? For me, a lot of it is to build connection, to be authentic, to just share these real things in my life that are happening. So those are some of the elements. I'll just recap. You want to think about your very first, you're going to say the very first thing, your hook, your attention getter. Remember that stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you want to think through them. Use vivid language that's going to speak to our senses, and think about the elements of the story itself. Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? Sense of place and time, environment, the plot, the conflict, the problem, the thing that prevents us from getting what we want, and the purpose. What is the reason for sharing that story? So I think that's a lot in and of itself. All those different elements are great things for you to take into consideration. And if you want to learn more, please do look up the hero's journey. Look up Aristotle's 3-act structure. So those would be like next level things. If you're interested, go ahead and check more of that stuff out. And in the future on my channel, I'll be doing more content on that as well. But this is plenty to get everybody started. I am certain this will inspire you to do something different the next time that you're creating your story. So I want to encourage you. This is my action step, my takeaway. Create a story bank. You have to find your stories, and you have to craft your stories once you have them. And trust me, you have a million more stories than you think you do, just from your own personal life and experience. So I take notes in an app, and I keep little stories, because all these great things happen to me, or hard things, difficult things happen to me. And I'll just write them down, because I won't always remember them on the spot. So creating a story bank that you can look back on and say, okay, I can tell this story for this. Just keep notes if you like them on paper, whatever you like. You can craft them and then refine. I just write down basic points, like the day this happened, this happened, this happened, and the theme of it could be used for this. So because I teach leadership, public speaking, and interpersonal communication, I like to craft my stories around those topics, especially when I'm teaching at the university. So that's an action step, and I sincerely hope that you guys find this helpful and that it inspires you to craft your own stories.
Perfect. And I will totally go back and make a screenshot of that one. And not only because it's really great to remember those points, but also you're really at the top of the slide presentation game.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm one of those weird people that can't move forward until I have a vision for the slide deck. And I don't always teach with the slide deck. Sometimes it's just better to keep it low key, no technology, no anything, and just come back to a story. But because I teach a lot, having the visuals helps reinforce the content too.
And I would say for most people, it's probably better to not do slides, because it's really an art form of itself to do good slides, and better no slides than bad slides. But that's not the point today. What I would really like to hear more about is building that story bank. How do we? Because now I know I want to tell a story, but what story? Where does it come from? So how do we collect those stories?
Okay, so you know how we need to exercise a little bit every day to have the health benefits. Like, it doesn't help if we exercise one time a month. That doesn't, right? So story banks, creating our story banks is similar in that things are going to happen to you. For example, I had to cancel my live stream for the first time ever. I started going live every week in November of this past year. So for like however many weeks, 16, 17, 18 weeks, I've been going live. And this past Wednesday, I made the decision to postpone it until next week, because the day before there was a very big fire, commercial fire, right down the street from me. And we had to evacuate the house. And my partner and I had some conversations that morning, like, what do we do in this immediate, like, we were woken up from the loud booming sounds from the fire. So this was a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. And I haven't processed all of it just yet, so I'm not ready to tell the story. Right now, I'm giving you an anecdotal account of what happened as my memory recalls it. But I think that there's a powerful lesson in there that I want to prepare and use to teach on interpersonal communication, crisis communication. Because in that moment, I because of the life that I've lived, I learned to manage chaos from a young age. And so my brain goes into logic, autopilot. Like, there's a lot of smoke. We need to get out of here. We packed up our dog. We packed up emergency stuff. I grabbed medications, money, passport, and the dog and my partner. And that's it. And we were out of here until we could get more information about safety. So that's a story that I'm going to put on my list. And it will, in the note, it will say, story about fire down the street, communicating with my partner what to take with us, because afterwards we had to speak about what were we feeling, what in that moment. And then it made us think, like, what do we do in an emergency? What's our plan? Like, whose house are we going to stay at if we need to, if we weren't able to come home? So, thankfully the fire is under control. And as of yesterday, even still, there's water being poured on it. And thankfully, and there's other things too, like thankfully there was no wind that day like there was the day before, because it would have been horrible for everyone in my neighborhood. So there's stories that happen in our life all the time. We just forget about them because we're living them. So it's about collecting them in the moment and thinking, I'm going to use this somehow, use this experience, or something I learned from someone even. So there are opportunities for these lessons everywhere. A life hack, an unfulfilled need that you might have, a lesson, something that just struck you with awe, a pain, a loss, an embarrassing moment, even like being willing to admit, like, this thing, or I did this all wrong. Someone on my LinkedIn feed today, actually, it's from eCamp community too, that I learned about him. Jan, he teaches workshops on connection and training and stuff. He was talking about, he's going to share about this big mistake that he made. So the stories, the opportunities are rich everywhere in our own personal lives. That's why I said you have a lot more content for your stories than you think. You just have to write them down so that you're going to remember them as you experience them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get that. So immediately capture the story. Doesn't need to be fleshed out, but just so you remember it. Because I'm already doing that with idea for content creation, because there is the same general idea. Once you sit before an empty paper, nothing will come up, and so just make notes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And that is a great way that we can use artificial intelligence like ChatGPT. Create a headline for me about my experience with a commercial fire down the street, and let it help you spark the headline to help you get going. I think artificial intelligence can help us prevent that kind of blank page syndrome.
Yeah.
And help us craft a better story too.
Absolutely. Yeah, as a starting point. Yeah. Did we see all slides? Just to make sure. Or
those are the ones
those
are the ones, and I know we're at 5:00. I'm not sure how long the stream goes, but the last thing I want to tell you is that you got to practice, right? And you're in an environment to practice as content creators, as streamers. So please take one thing from today. Maybe it's practicing more vivid language. Maybe you need to organize your stories a little bit better with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Maybe your characters are not as strong, or your conflict is not as strong. Whatever it is, just take one element and tell yourself, I'm going to put this into action this month. This month, I'm going to practice vivid language. And go ahead and do that. And then that's how we're going to keep getting better and better, because I think it's just a part of being human. We get so busy. We come to these things and we get value out of them, or we go to a workshop or a training, or we take a class, or we hear this person give us this great tip, but then we don't do anything about it because we didn't make a plan for it. So I want to encourage you guys to make sure that you're practicing, take some kind of an action, pop it in your calendar, whatever you need to do, put a sticky note, however you like to do your to-do list, and say, I'm going to practice this one thing, this takeaway for storytelling, so that you can become a better storyteller. And by all means, check out my content, check out other people's content. There's so many great resources available to help us become better storytellers. I'm one of them, but
Absolutely.
there are so many to check out.
Yeah, but I already connected with you, so I'll check out more of your. That's the thing we talked about. So Tatiana Teaches is the channel to go, and yeah, and you even said you will talk more about storytelling there, and you also talk about live streaming. You had a series about your gear. You took us behind the scenes, and yeah, it's really well thought out content, well crafted. I think you put a
Well,
lot
thank
more
you,
effort
Marcus.
in than me, because my effort is have a guest and prepare questions, and then I can lean back.
Okay, well, there's a lot to be said too about different styles, and we all connect in different
Absolutely.
ways, right? None of us only follow one person online. So I think that there's plenty of room for lots of different styles.
Absolutely. Yeah, but absolutely, if you're interested in storytelling, in streaming, or just connected here with Tatiana, go and check out her channel, Tatiana Teaches. And it was so fantastic. And it was even, I would say, refreshing and inspiring. And
Oh, fabulous. I love that. Marcus, tell me, what's from the content that I shared, what's one area that you want to put into practice for your own storytelling? Something that speaks to you. What would you like to work on?
yeah, of course, now I'm blanking. Because before, where you said, take this one thing with you, I totally had one thing.
Sure, I'll
But
give you
yeah,
some
let's
ideas.
let's
Tell me.
let's ask the chat also. What are you taking
Oh,
with you?
that is a great idea.
Yeah,
While we
we're going
think,
a little
absolutely.
bit over today, but it's worth it.
Oh
I
yes,
don't I
five
don't
minutes
have
overtime,
anywhere
guys.
to go. Yeah,
You get extra
yeah,
credit points for staying 5 minutes after the hour. Everyone,
yeah.
thank you for your extra time. We really appreciate it. But yeah, let me know what is one thing that you want to put into action.
Yeah.
And I want to say I really appreciate anybody and everybody who chimed in and shared a positive comment. I'm one of those people where those positive encouragement really means something. And so I can see them on the side of the screen here. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, for me, I really, I think just in general, for me today, I really learned by your example from storytelling, because all the theory I heard about it, I heard about beginning, middle, and end, and all those things. But how you answered my very first question, that gave me the example I need to. Yeah, and the other thing I take with me is just make notes of the story and go and practice them. And
Hmm.
okay, and Lala
Absolutely.
takes vivid language. Yeah, great.
Awesome. Yes, Lal. This is a great technique. It really is awesome to be able to use more vivid language as we craft those stories. And now that that's on your radar, it's going to happen. It's going to be able to be there.
Yeah.
And
I will watch out on the next stream from Lala. Where is the vivid language in there?
awesome. Yeah. And
Yeah,
another great thing to practice that's easy is to think about, how am I going to start? What's my hook? Thinking about that opening line of a story, of a stream, just being more conscious of. And that's something I'm working on as well. That's my number one thing is let that first thing be something memorable, something powerful, something crafted, something I've really thought through. Like really think about that attention getter.
yeah, absolutely. That was so fantastic, Tatiana. And if you're up to it, I would love to have you back someday. And
Oh, sure. A repeat
oh,
guest. Wow, I'm honored.
yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course.
And to just
Okay.
finish a little bit of the story that I was sharing in the beginning, my cervical spine surgery was a huge success, Marcus. It was a success and it was the right decision. I regained the strength in my right hand, and while I could no longer do photography and video, that was off the table for me. You know, that part of my life had to come to an end, but that allowed this part of my life to open up. And And this is a to be continued story, that this is not the end, right? I'm on this road, still moving forward, and I'm excited to see what comes. And so I just want to thank you and everyone in the audience for listening tonight, for your time. I know that's a very, very valuable resource, and I sincerely hope that it was something valuable for you in your own streams, your own content creation to take away from tonight. And Marcus, thank you very much for the invitation. It is much, much, much appreciated that you thought of me.
Oh, I thank you, but it was such a perfect way to end that I will now sip it, say thank you everyone, and see you next week. Thanks, bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.